Hey, what's going on, guys? Dylan from Flight Performance and Fitness. I got Jared here as my dummy today. And I'm gonna talk about a situation that happens relatively often where somebody comes in and they have the goal of doing a body weight chin up. And what I'm gonna talk about is what are the needs for them to be able to do that? So from a range of motion perspective, how are we gonna assess whether they have the overhead flexion to be able to do the exercise? And then do they have the strength to be able to do that exercise? And then now from a programming perspective, what are the things we're gonna have to do? What are the exercises we're gonna have to do in the programming considerations to get them to that point? So to be able to do a body weight chin up, the first thing we're gonna need is to have the overhead flexion, the overhead range of motion, to be able to get to that position and actually be safe to train some volume there. So first thing I'm gonna test is I'm gonna have him get his lower back tight to the wall, upper back, head is resting against the wall. He can bring his feet a little off the wall to be able to kind of get that position. And then I'm just gonna have him go from his side, arms staying straight. We're gonna see if he can get overhead to the wall without losing any of that back position. So this is gonna test his true overhead flexion. A lot of people, you'll see them be doing chin-ups and they're extending their back throughout. They're letting their neck and T-spine extend. And then in that case, they probably don't have true overhead flexion. It's probably not a great position for their shoulders to train safely. You can see with him, for him to even get close to the wall, he's already bringing his arms way out. And if he were to try to get his arms, just kind of jam it there, he's probably gonna have to lose this position to get there. Right, so I can see right here, like, at least for right now, he does not have the adequate overhead flexion to be able to be in a really good core position and good scapula position to be able to train a chin up really well. One thing we're gonna do here, I'm gonna show a couple different exercises that we can use to help him gain back that overhead flexion and help hopefully get him in a position where he can train that movement safely. So if somebody is restricted in that overhead flexion, there are two main elements that we're gonna address to try to get them into a good position. So the first thing is gonna be inhibiting those lats. So the lat is gonna be a depressor of the scapula, and it's also gonna be an internal rotator. So it's gonna make it really tough if we are extremely toned up and jammed up in the lats to be able to get overhead. So one thing we wanna do is get those muscles, get the lat muscles to relax a little bit, relieve a little tension. One way to do that, kind of quick and easy way, is to just do some soft tissue work to the lats. So I'm gonna have Jared here on the roller. He can extend his arm up a little bit. This is not something you need to spend a ton of time doing. We're talking 30, 45 seconds, maybe a minute, but just kind of whatever time feels good, where you feel like you're getting into that muscle, you're getting some blood flow to the area and relieving a little tension. A lot of times if you do, that overhead flexion test beforehand and then you do some soft tissue work, immediately you'll see a little bit of a change there as far as range of motion goes. So this is just a quick and easy thing that if we are a little bit jammed up there, that's a really good place to start. So another exercise we like to use to try to gain a little bit of overhead flexion is gonna be a hook line pullover. So the hook line pullover puts him in a really good core position. So it's stacking his rib cage and his pelvis. He gets a lot of feedback on where that position is, because if he does go too far and he starts to lose that core position, he's gonna feel his lower back coming off the ground. But what we're gonna do is I'm gonna have him reach this kettlebell up. We're gonna have him go overhead really slowly. So as he's doing this, he's gonna be actively lengthening his lats here, and he's also actively using his core to fight that extension. So what can happen, a lot of times people are gonna get restricted at a certain point. So let's say like right here, he's feeling tension, he's starting feeling a little blockage. What I'm gonna have him do is take a big inhale, big exhale, let those muscles relax, and he's essentially using that weight to help him get a stretch in the lats. So as long as he's continues to be in a really good core position, he's not gonna be putting his shoulder at nearly as much risk, because that scapula should be able to move a lot better. So this is an exercise that we're gonna kind of do lower reps, honestly, and just focusing on trying to build that range of motion. Anytime he's getting to a restriction, he's taking that big breath. And along with kind of like letting the lats release a little bit, he's also gaining some end range control. So of his lat tension and just of the shoulder mechanics in general. So he's starting to be able to control that overhead position and get comfortable with letting those lats release as he goes overhead into that flexion. So the other side of things, outside of just releasing that lat, is going to be getting our serratus muscles firing. The serratus is a hugely important muscle into getting some upward rotation of the scapula. That upward rotation of the scapula is something we need to get healthy overhead flexion. So I'm going to have Jared turn around here. If you want to do some slow reps of overhead flexion here, And what we're looking at is how his scapula moves around his rib cage. So if I can't get all the way into this rotation, I'm looking for about 135 degrees here. I want to be able to see this. I'm not going to have healthy overhead flexion. So he does an okay job here, but you'll see a lot of people will get, this will stay stuck down and then he'll try to be reaching overhead. And what that's going to lead to, if we don't create that space in the shoulder girdle, you know, this humerus is going to be impinging on a lot of those tissues inside the shoulder. So we need that along with the lats to be released to allow that scapula to move up. We need the serratus to be active to really be able to drive that scapula around the rib cage. So the first exercise I'm gonna show here is gonna be a single arm serratus foam roller reach. He's gonna set up with the foam roller around his wrist. He can be in a half kneeling position is gonna be good because it's gonna help him control his core position. If he's neutral, if he had both feet even, it's gonna be a lot harder to control that extension and flexion. So this will be a little bit better position for most people. The first thing we really need is to get that protraction. We need that scapula to reach forward. So a lot of people who have issues with, you know, shoulder mobility, they're kind of keeping those scapula locked down and back, and they're trying to hold that position because they think it's going to add some stability. But what we really want is this scapula to move around the rib cage, just even to start. Okay, so we want that protraction. So I'm going to cue him to reach, and I'm also going to cue to get a big inhale, big exhale. And that's going to help you see his rib cage kind of move backwards there. So he's getting more range, more wrap around with that scapula. Then the next thing I'm going to have him do, we want him to fight to keep his elbow right under his wrist. And then we're going to roll. We're going to do a little slide here. So the foam roller is going to be sliding on his forearm. And you can see this scapula. We're trying to get it to move as much as we can around that rib cage. And it's not going to be a ton of range of motion. You can see how limited or how tough it is as he starts to roll up. But you can start to see the edge of that scapula move around, and we're getting to that kind of range of what I was looking for when I first kind of introduced it. And he should be kind of lit up right in that serratus area. It's kind of right around your ribs, kind of that punching muscle. So one thing, if people are really struggling with this and they're struggling to feel their serratus, another thing what we're going to have them do is get to that top wherever they're sort of restricted. And then again, big inhale, big exhale. The serratus is also a muscle that is going to be turned on when we exhale in general. It's a muscle that works the rib cage moving. So that exhale is going to be something you want to use if we're trying to turn those muscles on. So another great exercise or group of exercises we're going to use a lot is going to be kind of bear crawling variations. And I think the reverse bear crawl is kind of one of the best if we're particularly trying to target that serratus. We found that, you know, some of the wall drill exercises and stuff sometimes can be tough for people to feel the serratus the way we want them to. A lot of times the ground-based stuff where they can really get a lot of feedback and have something to push against can be a little bit better option. So we're gonna get him in this bear position. I'm gonna have him really tug his hips a little bit, and then we're also gonna have him reach again, get that protraction. If he's struggling with that, having him exhale again, like we talked about. And then I'm gonna have him do a reverse bear crawl where he's really gonna emphasize driving through the ground and really reaching through that shoulder blade. So he's kind of keeping the rest of his position kind of locked in, but we're getting as much as he can out of that reach, and he's actively pushing against the ground. So we're kind of getting more and more overhead as he pushes, and he should be actively feeling that serratus the whole time. Obviously, this is also just a great warm-up exercise because it is kind of full body, and he's getting a lot of things integrated at once. So another good exercise to kind of inhibit those lats a little bit and also just work on being able to hold onto the bar, get some tension there as far as the shoulder goes so that you kind of feel stable, is going to be, we call it a lat hang, and we're going to emphasize some breathing here. What he's going to do is going to grab the bar, he'll get his feet out in front of him a little bit because what we don't want is him to be hanging in that extension. That's going to make it really tough for him to get into a good position with the scapula. So we want his feet in front of him. He's going to tuck his hips a little bit. So you can see this isn't completely overhead, right? It's a little less range of motion, which is what we want right now because we're obviously a little limited there. So we're gonna have him bring those feet forward in a good core position, and then we're just having him do some box breathing. So it's gonna be 4 seconds, inhale, hold, 4 seconds exhale. As he exhales, he'll kind of feel his rib cage coming down, his core active, and he should feel a deeper stretch in his lats and a lot of times in his chest as well, which is going to be another kind of limiter. It's going to internally rotate you. So this is going to be a good exercise maybe after we foam roll to be able to just release the tension here and be able to get a little bit more range, less resistance out of the lats. For all of the exercise, the kind of lat inhibition exercise and serratus exercises, they're going to be best probably in that warm-up block, 1 to 2 sets, 6 to 10 reps of most of those things. And the emphasis is really just on quality, not quantity. So if you feel like you're really kind of getting fatigued, and after that 6th rep, it starts to like be really tough to feel the right things, then just cut it off there. We're really looking to make sure we're just feeling the right muscles or getting the release from certain muscles, particularly the lats with this. 1 to 2 sets through in that warm-up block before we're getting into our main strength exercises. So obviously we want people to have enough range of motion to be able to do the chin-up safely, right? The other side of things is them just being strong enough to do the chin-up, right? They might be able to get into a good position, but do they have the pulling strength? So the pull down is going to be something we're definitely going to emphasize a lot with people if their goal is to do a chin-up. So we need to be able to do our body weight pulling down to our side before we're probably going to be able to do a chin-up really well. That's something we're going to train here. I'm going to kind of talk about what the mechanics we're looking for with the pull down. But essentially, Jared's going to set up on his butt here. You might have, if you have a machine at the gym, it would be like maybe a lat pull down machine. But I think this cable setup is a little better, a little easier to be able to maintain core position, and he doesn't have to be completely overhead. So if we're we're in a situation where we're still working on that overhead mobility, then this is going to be a better position because he can still get that serratus working to actually upwardly rotate when he reaches, but he doesn't have to be completely overhead. So we're gonna be sitting down here and Jared's just gonna go through this full range of motion. Let's do a couple reps here. Basically, he's pulling his elbows to his side. As he reaches up, this is something we see a lot of. So let's do a bad rep here. Let's keep our scaps down and just reach our arms. So it's kind of what we were talking about before. If that scapula doesn't move as we reach, he's gonna get some irritation in the front of his shoulder generally. So we want full reach on the way up, get that stretch, let that scapula move upwardly, rotate around the ribs, and then he's gonna pull down to his side using his lats. Lat is gonna be the main muscle that we're working, so we want it working both ways. We want it in that stretch, getting that eccentric, lengthening, and then really pulling down and getting his shoulders away from his ears as much as you can. So as I said, a lot of the volume you're going to want to do is going to be more on the pull down side of things and really just strengthening your lats, building muscle there. But with any exercise that we're working on, any skill, there's going to be some specificity to it. So we want to actually train the exercise as much as close to the exercise that we're looking to do as much as possible. So another tool we'll use along with strengthening our lats with the pull downs is doing some eccentrics and some iso holds in that chin up position. So what I'm gonna have Jared do is grab the bar. He can either jump up or kind of climb up using his feet on the rack, which is kind of maybe an easier way. And then from here, he's just gonna hold at the top, try to really squeeze his lats for a couple seconds, and then slowly lower down. So he's essentially trying to go as slow as possible with the eccentric. So he's learning how to really control the position, own the position. And this is gonna be really hard on the lats and really hard on just owning his core position. So these are gonna be really tough, especially if we still have a long way to go as far as strength goes. So we're thinking 2 to 5 reps. And you can do multiple sets of it, so more on that 3 to 5 set range. So you're treating it like a really big strength exercise, and then you'd probably end up doing the pull down sort of after to be able to get adequate volume to really build muscle. And another variation that I don't like quite as much, but is useful in certain situations, would be a band-assisted chin-up. If you're using a rack like this, there's just some issues around finding the right amount of band tension and kind of how we want to progress this. So if you are at a gym that has a chin-up machine where you can slowly, incrementally, take assistance away, that would be the ideal way, because then you can go week to week and just make a little bit of progress on how much that machine is assisting you to do a chin-up. But the value of doing these at all is that we want to train that full range both ways. Like I said, there's always going to be some specificity with when trying to learn the technique of an exercise. So we want to actually work on getting that full stretch on the way down and really using your lats and using your back in this actual position. So that's where the band can kind of come into play. If you are in a situation where you're going to do it at a gym that doesn't have a machine or something like that, and you want to use the band assistance, I like this setup a lot better, where you're hooking it around the bar hooks, compared to, you'll see a lot of people set it up, the band up top, wrap it around, and then put it inside the foot or the knee. The issue with that is the band's always flopping around. People don't have the stability. Like I said, we're working on the mechanics of this, the technique. So I actually want to add a little bit of stability here to make it easier for the person to feel the right things. And I would say it's more going to be, an exercise on another day to sort of add to our volume that we're doing of pulling variations. So what I'm going to have Jared do is just step up to it. He can step right to the band. And he's just going to go through that full range of motion of that chin up. And the big emphasis is still maintaining that core position. He's not doing that extension as he comes down or up. He's allowing lats to stretch, allowing that serratus to upwardly rotate, and then really get that pull on the way up. So I would say, as far as band tension goes, we want to go a little bit on the easy side, because we want to just train the mechanics of this. It should still be hard, as far as like he's working his lats, he's feeling his, his hands and his biceps, all that. But I don't want him grinding through these reps. The goal is to really work on the technique and the mechanics of it all and make sure the right muscles are firing. So like I said, err on the side of a little too easy than a little too hard. All right, so to sum things up, if you're somebody who's looking to do a chin-up, or you're working with a client who's looking to do a chin-up, the main things we want to emphasize is, first off, making sure they have enough overhead flexion. That's going to mean doing some exercises that are going to inhibit the lats. We want to get serratus firing so we can get that upward rotation of the scapula. And then the other thing is going to be using other variations to really build that lat strength and overhead strength in that pulling motion.